Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. As Friedel's marauder tribes invade and ravage the northern sectors of the Empire, it's tough work, and what a better way to relax at the end of a hard day ravaging than to roast barbecued Frida and Frederick over the remnants of their house. Let's build a burning building.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club, your event or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
The Raising of Westerland Arcane Journal has some really stunning army pictures inside. I've always loved artwork or pictures like this and setups, and they're getting so good these days with all the Photoshop adjustments and things as well, and it just looks absolutely stunning, and it always fills me with loads of inspiration, and you can see the burning buildings in the background there, and that's why I wanted to make this video and make the buildings that I have. And this is what I'm going to be showing you how I made today. Admittedly, a slightly Temu looking version now compared to those beautiful studio shots, but I still think they're pretty fun. Anyway, let's get to it. And this is the War of the Rohirrim latest supplement for Middle-earth strategy battle game. Arcane Journal sized, we're very used to them. It's the first of that type for that game system. But they have a hobby section inside, and in that hobby section you'll see some burning buildings. They're using the Rohan kit, but it's essentially what's given me the idea. It's all very, very simple. I've not actually read the instructions how to do it, but I've just looked at the pictures, seen they're using balsa, and that's what I'm going to be using today, along with the chapel kit and some wooden bases for the scenery as well. I'm a big fan of this kit. I wish there were a couple more different designs so that you could have multiple of them and they don't look quite so odd, but I've been using kits from other manufacturers and things as well. But I wanted to use something that was relatively easy to get hold of and Games Workshop based just for the purposes of this video. And this kit is really, really easy to assemble and easy to hack up and make look burnt, as you'll see. We won't need all of the little extra parts on it. So it's a case of clipping off the main construction of the building, and I think I just clipped off a couple of the windows as well because I wanted to cover some of the front windows on the building that look sort of extra blingy, and that's not really needed on this building. I won't bore you with all the details of building these kits. They're pretty straightforward. I didn't even look at the instructions. I've built so many of these, but I could started to construct them at least so I could build sort of L shapes. And I'm making this one kit into two ruined buildings. That's the other benefit of making ruined or burnt out buildings, that you can get more pieces of terrain out of the one kit. These are some pre-cut NDF shapes that I bought on eBay years ago. Had quite a stack of them just to use as terrain bases. I don't have tools to machine bits of wood or a circular saw or a jigsaw to cut stuff like this, so I tend to buy them. And I'm just working out now which bits I'm going to be using on which little wooden base. Essentially, I start to glue the bits together. And rather than having two neat L's, I'm cutting some of the end panels in half, or part cutting, part ripping them, so they look really, really jagged. You don't need it to be neat. Obviously, it's a building that's been on fire or is on fire and is crumbling and down and falling apart. It enabled me to make one building a little bit thinner as well. The bases I have, they seem to be of two profiles, one sort of long and thin and one a bit shorter and fatter. And then I'm doing the same with the top half of those buildings as well. So I'm just cutting each end rather than using a saw. I'm just using brute strength to pull them apart. And what I'm ending up here is with one building that's slightly larger, got one full side on and one ripped in half. And then the other half of the building, I won't be putting them back together. The other half of the building is that slightly slimmer profile that I mentioned. And I'm doing the same thing with the roofs a little bit as well. I don't want it to be a sharp edge where the building's completely crumbled away. So I want it to be tapered off and look a bit rough like that. And then we can use all of the bits we've broken off or cut off on the base as well as bits of rubble and building that has collapsed onto the floor. Now the buildings are fully glued together and dry, I can stick them down to those bases, glue all the bits of the rubble on and start to work on the next stage, which I'm going to be using balsa wood for. And the main reason I'm using balsa wood is it's just incredibly easy to cut just with a hobby knife. No sawing required. I'm just doing a very, very loose mark on the length of the roof there. I'm not measuring it. It doesn't matter because this is a ruined building. You can be pretty rough and ready with it. Just scoring it and cutting it with my blade. Now, ideally here you'd be using a steel ruler. I couldn't find my steel ruler, so I'm just using a bit of off-cut wood with a straight edge so that I can cut down little beams of wood, or what will be beams of wood. I'm just making them all pretty much the same size so they look fairly uniform. From this stage on, it was super glue out and then just crack on with it, sticking things as I go. I didn't even plan it out too much. Because of the way I'm going to paint them, I'm going to be adding lots of texture paint onto them as well, and they're going to be so ruined. I wasn't too worried if it didn't quite look super neat, just trimming the edge of one beam off here so when it sticks out where the roof has broken away, it doesn't look like a neat sort of sharp edge. I'm not worrying too much about the architecture here. I just wanted to look something that's semi-passable or realistic to the casual eye. If a building had burnt away, leaving just the shell of it underneath, I'm sure it wouldn't work like this, but as long as it looks just about right to the eye, that's perfect. It might be worth, if you're following this at home and you're going to make your own, you want to make it a little bit stronger, just adding a little bit of a pin using a paper clip or something like that into the sections of balsa wood, just to give it a slightly stronger bond between the two parts. Balsa wood is extremely brittle, not much stronger than polystyrene really. So if you're gluing it like this and you're going to pick it up, bits will just snap off. I only game at home with these. If I was taking these to a club or something, I would definitely be doing that, but I'll game at home, and if I accidentally break the odd bit, well, I'll just whip out the super glue and stick it straight back together. But again, if you want them to be a little bit more robust, I would definitely recommend that. And once my basic structure was there, it was just a case of filling in the gaps with lots of little bits of broken rubble, be that bits of the plastic kit which I'd cut off, which has got a bit of detail and things on anyway, or broken up parts of balsa wood itself, just sort of piling them up as if, as the building has burnt down, that they've collapsed in on themselves into the building. And essentially that's what you're left with there. You can see one side of the structure has stayed more intact and the other side is a bare shell that's collapsed into itself, and I'm going to paint it as it's all burnt out and blackened out as well. After that, it was very much rinse and repeat for the second building. Same principles, same ideas, same size bits of wood, just again filling in that sort of recess area there with lots of broken rubble so that it looks like it's fallen in on itself. After that, I'm just adding quite a lot of texture paint. Now I'm using my least used texture paint because it doesn't matter what colour it is. I'm going to be spraying over the top of this afterwards. You could just add PVA glue and sand as well, but I do go on and add this paste, this paint, onto a lot of the wood as well and around the broken edges of the buildings, really to sort of symbolise that charred, charcoaled wood after it's been burning quite a lot. It covers over a multitude of sins where you've broken the edge of the plastic in. It looks like stressed plastic rather than broken down building. You can also cover the inside of these buildings. You'll notice that they have zero detail on them as well. So by adding a layer of texture on the inside, once it's all black and charcoaled and blackened up inside, then again it just looks like it's been burnt out rather than, isn't that just plain plastic? Not that it's going to be seen that much when it's dark on the inside, but still it's super easy to do. It just gives you a really nice sort of texture base to work from. This is what they look like at the halfway stage, so to speak. Everything's built and dried and sealed in with a really good covering of a matte rattle can. And everything's ready to go now for the next stage, the real paint. And of course, though, because they're blackened, you could probably keep that to minimal if you really wanted to. Here's two greys and a white. We've got a dark grey, first of all, I'm going to be using through the airbrush, and then I have a light grey and a white to pick out some of the nicer unburnt areas of the wooden building, and I'm using a thinner as well through the airbrush. If you don't have an airbrush for this, I would recommend sponging these on. You can just hand paint them on as well, but sponging them or stippling on would probably be the quickest way of doing it. I'm using some Army Painter paints here as well because I'm working towards a review video all about using war paint, as I missed them off a previous video I made about paints. So that's something to come in the future, but you'll notice a lot of army painter paints in this video for that very reason, and you may see some of these shots appear in a future video. If you are interested in the full paints used in this video, I'll be holding them up to camera, but they also appear on my Patreon page, and they are available to view to free members as well, so you don't have to pay anything to see them, and you don't even have to draw Patreon if you don't want to, because you can just pause the video and take a note as I hold them up to the screen as well. But that darkest layer through the airbrush there was just to slightly lighting it all over, pick out some of the detail, almost zenithal-like, and then just where we have the sort of patches where the plaster would be on the outside of the building, I'm going in with that lighter grey, and then I'll follow up a little bit with white as well, keeping the darkest around the edges, leaving out a little bit of shadow in there. It also makes it look a little bit more worn and weathered. It just gives it a little bit more interest. Now, so much of this building has been fire damaged or burnt. This is kind of all of the lighter area you're picking out. I'm trying to leave all of the stones as grey as I possibly can as well. Really give myself as little work to do as possible, and there's not that many paints used in this video at all. There's a tiny bit of underpainting going on here. I'm adding a couple of streaks to the top of the roof in reverse, so basically adding some light, so we'll be using a bit of contrast or speed paint on the roof as well, but essentially just following everything I've just described over on both ruined buildings. So this is that lighter grey, the mid colour, and that little triad I made up, ash grey here, and I'm just going to be doing some dry brushing now. The dry palette's from Knott's Hobbies, and I'm just using a Amazon cheap dry brush, or the round effect style things. If you watch my videos, you'll have seen these before. Very little paint on the brush, lots of circular motions, and I'm just trying to pick out the detail on the edges of the roof, and I'll move on to the stone areas as well, so that when I add paint afterwards and the odd glaze here or there, it's picked out the detail a little bit. So it's standard dry brushing, but it also works as a nice little underpaint in other places as well. I do also cover some of the burnt wood areas, just picking out some of that detail from that texture paint, just gives it a little bit more of a 3D look. And then moving on to that white and the same dry brushing again. The difference this time is I'm mostly sticking to the roof, a little bit on some of the stone areas at the edges, just at the top where the light would catch. Paint super light here. Want to make sure there's hardly any paint on that brush. Lots of circular motions are working with the detail. I really just want to catch the edges of the tiles. I don't want any of the wet streaks. That means I've got too much paint on my brush, and this will really help boost the next layers of paint. I want to go for one of those blued style roof tile effects here. So this is an Army Painter speed paint, and I'm just doing it at great speed here because I sped the footage up. I'm just applying it to the roof, adding a little bit of water to thin and spread it out again, so all of that underpainting, that shadow from the tiles and all of that lighter area where I've done the dry brushing just shows through, so I don't have to do any highlighting whatsoever, just weathering after this stage. And this is kind of rinse and repeat here, but with a different colour. So hardened leather on the other building's roof. I want to make sure that it doesn't look like one building that's just been split in half. I want people to look at the table and look at the terrain and think that's two ruined buildings, rather than two different halves of the same one. This is one of the Army Painter speed paint metallics, and I've not used them very much. I've only got 3 of them. I know a lot of people have said in videos before, what do you think of them? They're absolutely fine. I won't be using them very often, but as this is a terrain piece, this will do the job that I need now, especially with later weathering going on. And with the underpainting that I've done, there's a bit of darkness and a little bit of light in the area I'm painting. So it does give you a little bit of a highlight boost. It's cool. It's definitely a good way of painting things quickly for sure. I can't see me using this too often on a miniature itself, on a normal warrior or something like that. But it's really good for this kind of thing. Again, more rinse and repeat. The other building gets another speed paint metallic, but this is more the silver based one, for a similar kind of effect as well. And I think this is pretty good as well. Works fine, does everything you need. You could very easily go along and wash on top of this and then highlight normally, but it's fine. It does the job. I think it's pretty cool, and for terrain, just absolutely perfect if you're trying to do terrain pieces quite quickly. The way I do wood has been shown on loads of videos before. I'm just using a green and a brown here. These are speed paints, a little bit thinned in my palette, and basically wet blended together on the miniature. And I've already picked out the metallics in that speed paint metallic. I've just given both miniatures a quick blast with matte varnish just to protect them a little bit, especially when I'm using some paints I'm not used to with the Army Painter that I'm testing at the moment. But we have some oil washes here. I've got 2 browns and a green, essentially. Again, the actual paint names will be available on the screen a second ago, or you can go and check them out on the Patreon. I'm just painting in some weathered streaks on the roofs to start with, just some streaks where the rain might have run down before the fires started, but then also moving on to the rest of the buildings and adding in the darker browns and the lighter brown to sort of run into the detail. So the darker brown over the metal areas, just essentially to shade it just like you would with a Nuln Oil or Agrax Earth shade, and then the lighter one I'm using around the edges of the stonework and where it meets the plaster work. And the oil washes are great, they really run into those recesses and don't pull quite as much on the surfaces at all, and when they dry the thinner evaporates, leaving this really nice sort of weathered effect in between the areas. And that's why I like using them, especially for terrain. But I love using them on sort of grimy areas like this, on bases. So they're just absolutely perfect for terrain work like this. Even on the sort of the beams of wood made by balsa, it just really runs into the natural detail on the balsa wood as well. Just fills it all in, shades it nicely, and weathers. Definitely give them a go. Grab an old brush, buy some and slap them on and try them out, because you may find you really like them. It is worth protecting your miniatures first with a little bit of a varnish stage before you do it, just to be safe. I don't always do that, but I suppose best practice would be at least to do that until you know that the paints you're using won't come off again. It really depends sometimes on whether metallics or not, or the brands of paints that you're using. This is Grim Black, and I'm going to be using it through the airbrush. If you don't have an airbrush and you're following on the rest of this, you probably want to sponge on just a regular black paint, the most matte version that you can find, because essentially what I'm doing here is recreating the charcoal burnt areas around the edges of the wood. Obviously it's black already on most of the inside of the miniature, but there are some grey tints to it as well because of the airbrush work I did earlier on. So I'm just sort of going back and adding some different patches and variations, but I'm mostly focusing, as you can see here, around the edges of the building where it's completely crumbled away and burnt away, and just darkening that back up. Now when it first goes on wet, it looks very shiny like that, but as soon as it dries, it's pretty matte. And I think you can see there the kind of effect I'm going for, where it's burnt at its worst. I'm guessing the unburnt part of the building was protected. Maybe the wind was blowing from that direction and forcing the flames in the other way. But I really think that this is the biggest effect on the buildings. Really finishes them off, stops them looking like something that's just crumbled and decayed over time, and really shows quite clearly, yes, this is fire damage. Now I'm going to be using some basic texture that I want to keep on there. I'm not just going to spray over the top afterwards. This one's actually Muddy Ground, I think, from AK. And you don't need to get in everywhere on the base. You've got a lot of sooty wood and rubble that's fallen to the bottom. So the blacks and the greys and things that you have on the miniature already actually look quite good, to be honest with you. But definitely going around the edge of the building so you can add a little bit of flock or tufts and things to blend it into the environment of your gaming mat, depending on what it is. If it's a city baseboard, you might not want to do browns and grass and things like that. If you've got terrain that's snow based, you might want to be adding some snow and things like that. But for the most people, they'll have a sort of grassish colour mats, and going for brown like this as a base will make sense. After that, I'm going back to the darkest of those oil washes we saw earlier on, the brown, and just essentially using that as a wash over that textured paint that I've just placed down. Just the same way you should stick Agrax Earth shade over a sterling mud on your base if you're a Citadel user. And there's 2 types of flock here. They are both custom mixes that I haven't made, so I can't tell you what they are. Use your favourite brands or just use tufts or something, but I'm just adding a little bit of PVA. I'm going to be adding the 2 types of flock that I use that match all the other terrain that I have in my collection. Once they're done, I'm adding a few tufts as well, just to match my armies. I use these winter ones for more painted scenics a lot, and just gluing them on and just adding a little bit. It looks a bit more quality, if I'm honest with you, so it just adds a little bit more character rather than the flat flocks that I've been using, and just looks like the slightly longer tuft of grass growing out amongst some others. And you look at a grassy field, there's different lengths of grasses and things going on in the wild, and all in all I think they come out pretty cool. It's what I had in mind anyway when I started out the project. But let's have a look at some proper pictures. I'd read that section in the War on the Roja Rim Middle-earth strategy battle game book and thought the buildings looked really, really cool. I had in my mind to do something like that for quite a while for the old world, and as soon as I saw the Arcane Journal with all the buildings burning in the background, I don't know how much of that was Photoshop and how much of that has been kits that the studio have built, but I thought, well, it's going to be really easy to do. I can buy a single chapel kit and I can easily make two out of it, and I may well pick up a watchtower as well and do a similar version for the watchtower, because I think it would be cool to have a few more burnt out buildings, and I'll probably pick up some third-party kits as well. I know there's some 3D printed kits out there. You can buy them in sections, which is a little bit easier than smashing them up, but you could quite easily buy a cheap sort of solid print and then stick a hammer through the roof and again make it look like it's burnt out using some of the same principles. Some of the things I like about this from a speed point of view is you've not got much to paint at all on the inside, and that balsa wood does an awful lot of heavy lifting just by painting it black and making it look all burnt out and crumbly. You're not really having to do anything too hard there whatsoever. The texture paint can hide any of the things you've messed up, anything that looks ugly, and then just by painting it black and giving it a bit of dry brushing just looks great. So in terms of actual painting, there's less detail that you need to pick out here than you would do on a normal building, and I've chosen to hide an awful lot of it with damage essentially. And I painted both of these from building to completely finished and taking pictures. I did the lot in about 8 hours, I think, which isn't too bad. So I kind of a day's work I could produce 2 buildings like this. Well, I think that's not too bad at all to have some pretty sort of, I think, pretty striking looking bits of terrain to have in your building. You can obviously add some teddy bear fur here and some flickering candles to make them really look like they're on fire, which is always good fun to have on your tables as well. And I think there's probably even better ways, more modern ways of doing flame effect now, but that's all these are. And I think they look cracking on the table, if not as good as the studio paint jobs and the studio setups. I still think they look pretty cool. But let me know what you think in the comments. You can have a go at this yourself. If you think of any better ways of doing this or have any ideas, I always love to hear what other people think in the comments about painting hobby and terrain like this. I've got another sort of marauder-based terrain project on the way, which hopefully will follow not too long distant future after this one, so look out for that soon as well. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I always enjoy making terrain and definitely like making terrain based content. I know it's normally pretty popular on the channel, so I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have done so, please give the video a like and drop a comment below. And if you haven't already done so, also consider subscribing to the channel as well. Making content like this, while being fun, takes a lot of time building, painting, filming, editing and all the rest. So if you'd like to see more of that, in order to enable me to have the time to be able to do that, the very best way of supporting me to do that is to take a look at my Patreon. If you're able to support me there, I would greatly appreciate it. There's 4 different tiers to suit different needs, from basic level of support right up to some private one-on-one coaching over Zoom with your painting as well. So please do take a look at that. Also check out the channel sponsor Counterattack Bases for all your gaming aids and custom dice. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.